Yolk Alta. Seeing our mother again was just what we needed. Traveling back home had been a pleasant journey, but nothing beats the smell of home. Nash was devastated to learn that Mother had just started the stew, though, and it wouldn't be ready until tomorrow. We opted to grab a bite to eat at the Adventurers Guild and invited Mom to join us, but she had other plans for dinner. Tales of our adventures would likely have to wait until the next day, which was fine by us. It gave us that much more time to figure out which parts to leave out. We entered the guild, placed our order with Nima, and took a seat at one of the elongated tables. Nash likes sitting in the middle of tables for some reason. Speaking of stuff that Nash likes, should we check our levels? I asked Nash with a grin. Maybe after food, I'm starving, he replied, ignoring the jab but blushing slightly. I chuckled slightly but felt a small pang of envy. Not because I have any sort of amorous feelings toward Nima, but because I've never felt the way that they do. At least I don't think so. I have been told that I'm quite clueless when it comes to romantic situations. I'll admit that the art of flirting requires a conversational subtlety that eludes me most of the time, but I definitely feel like I would know it if a woman liked me in that manner. And no matter what anyone tells me, I still feel like puns and wordplay aren't the best indicator of romantic interest. I heard somebody say food, a booming voice from behind me said. Nash and Nick's eyes widened, and I turned around to find Thunra Grantoof standing behind me. The absolutely massive orc beamed at us. I glanced back at my brothers and caught Nick instinctively placing a hand on his stomach. Nash recovered from the shock first. Thunra! Good to see you again, he said. What brings you to these parts? The big brawler took the question as an invitation and plopped down into the empty seat next to me and directly across from Nick. Guarding a caravan that happened to be headed this way. Stumbled on the job after the group split, and it paid well enough that I decided to take a little vacation. The group split? I asked. Well, yeah. We weren't exactly a long-term team. I brought up becoming one. But Joni and Yesith wanted to take a break and spend some of the coin we earned. Matri had some personal stuff to deal with. So, being the last remaining member of the group, I started looking for jobs, can never have enough coin, and found one that brought me out this way. Figured it was the best chance to see you lot again. Thunra sat there with a grin on his face, as if expecting us to ask why he wanted to see us again. Nick, Nash, and I shared a glance, and it was apparent that we were all aware of the reason. We sat there awkwardly for a moment before Nick let out a small sigh. Why did you want to see us again, Thunra? Nick asked in a slightly sarcastic tone. To train you, Thunra laughed. You show promise, kid! With my help, you'll be a full-class brawler in just a couple of months. Maybe a year. Well, actually, I'm going to be enrolling in the Magic Academy. The what? High Chief Ulurmak is heading up the creation of a school dedicated to the study of magic in Kirkana, I explained. I'll be teaching there, and Nick is wanting to be a student. Oh, really? The mountainous orc frowned. When did they get that built? It's not finished yet. The High Chief said it would be a couple of weeks. Perfect. We can train in the meantime. Thunra grinned again. Since we're in the village, you'll be able to get good food and rest, which will help you learn even faster. Then, once you're done schooling, we can tackle your training proper. You'll be a brawler mage! Imagine, a fireball with one hand and a fist with the other. Thunra let out a hearty laugh. Nick, however, looked as if he was struggling not to vomit. Or perhaps cry. Nick paused to collect himself. I was kind of hoping to... Thunra's got a good point, Nash said with an evil chuckle. You're already as far as I can take you with the sword. Focusing on magic will be good, but failing to take the opportunity to gain some more hand-to-hand skills would be foolish. Nick looked to me, his eyes begging for help. The gaze reminded me of a pupper begging to go for a walk, and would normally be rather effective. Unfortunately. I agree, I said, tactfully avoiding Nick's pleading gaze. The stronger we become, the better the odds of us getting you home. Then it's settled, Thunra said, reaching across the table and patting the deflated human on the shoulder. I'll be seeing you boys tomorrow at the training pit. You're not going to join us for dinner? I asked. Huh? Oh, you mean what I said earlier? Nah, I was just kidding, I already ate, he laughed. Thought it'd be a funny way to announce myself. Thunra's hefty mass rose from next to me and we said our farewells. Nash and I glanced at Nick, who had the visage of someone who has just been told about their upcoming funeral, and shared a look of mirth. The human's aversion to painful training spoke of a lifetime of soft living, and while on some levels it was pitiable, on others it was pretty amusing. Before I could voice that opinion, The sound of a different and much lighter rump hitting the chair next to me drew my attention. I turned with a start, only to find that Yini had taken the seat previously occupied by Thunra. Catalina and Nomura stood nearby, staring at her in shock. Hello, Yini, I stammered, surprised by this development. You didn't come say hi, she said angrily. We only just got back, I replied. Got off the cart, saw Mom, then came to get dinner. I was planning to see you and the girls for lessons tomorrow. I have a new book about the fair folk, and learned quite a deal about them on our travels. Yini's face had softened until I mentioned lessons. She scoffed dramatically as the other girls found a seat. Catalina sat next to Yini, and Nomura walked over to the chair next to Nick and claimed it. Nash and I raised our eyebrow at Nomura, and she crossed her arms at us, challenging us to say something about it. Will you be joining us for dinner? I asked. Yes, and you're paying as an apology for ignoring us, Yini said. That's fine. You make fine company. The compliment caused her to become a slightly darker shade of green, like whenever I mentioned Nima to Nash in a romantic light. But Yini always gets bashful when she's complimented, so I thought nothing more of it. Careful, brother, Nash warned. We made plenty of coin in our travels, but these three are bottomless pits. I think you'll find that I have quite the bottom, Nash, Yini said, her tone approaching a growl. Nash raised his eyebrows and chuckled, having immediately picked up on the double meaning. I put a hand to my mouth and pretended to cough to hide my own laughter. Yini glanced at the two of us with confusion before realizing what she had said. Wait, that's not what I meant, she stammered. I meant that I'm easy to fill. Nash's grin widened. With food. Before the inadvertent innuendo could continue, Nima arrived with our food. She smiled, set down our platter and pitcher, then pulled up a chair and sat next to Nash. His expression morphed from a mirth-filled smugness into shy reservation, and I treated him to the same grin he had just been wearing. Joining us, Nima? I asked. Of course. You were the last lot in for dinner, so I've got nothing better to do. Well, actually, the girls here, we're fine, Yini said hurriedly. Don't mind us. Nima gave Yini a smile that indicated that my pupil had correctly read the situation and made the right decision. I nodded sagely at Yini, and she punched me in the arm. Softly, though, as if chiding me for my lack of social awareness. So, what have you boys been up to? Nima asked. Nash looked too shy to speak, and Nick was staring pointedly at the table. The girls were wearing their normal attire, which by the standards of most cultures would be considered revealing. Having been well inoculated against the sexualization of mammary tissue, I hadn't even noticed. Well, as you know, we initially made our way to Kirkina because the High Chief wanted to meet Nick, I said, taking the initiative in the tale-telling. Nash and Nick began to eat as I relayed our adventures to the girls between bites of my own food. I told them about the bandit attack, our encounters with the fair folk, the awakened high dragon, our reward for saving a certain merchant whose name escaped me, our trip to Calcuti, our fight with the vampires, the kobolds, and nearly everything else. The only parts I left out were the ones in which we nearly died. The sun had passed the horizon, and its light had fled the guild by the time I was wrapping up the story of our adventures thus far. I paused when the story came to our last meeting with Ulermak. I stared at my food in the torchlight, trying to find the best way to word what happened next. The High Chief plans to open a school that is focused on the study of magic in Kirkina, I told them. Nick plans to enroll, and I have been invited to teach. Nima excitedly congratulated me, but I felt a sudden darkness coming from my left. Yini had always been fond of her teacher, almost to the point of being clingy. The news of my upcoming move was bound to upset her. I glanced at my pupil, but instead of anger I saw resolve. How do I enroll? She asked. What? I stammered. How do I enroll in this new school? You're capable of magic? I don't know. Never tried. Even if I'm not, though, having people study it academically can't be a bad thing. Well, I don't know. What do you mean? I'm a good student, aren't I? She asked with a pout. It's not that, I said. I mean, I don't know how one goes about enrolling. Nick was in a unique position to do so. Guess you'll just have to tag along when they leave for school, Catalina interjected. I'll do the same, Nomura replied. I've been wondering if I have any sort of magical aptitude. Nash had recovered from his bashfulness and returned the look I'd given him when Nima had sat next to him. I looked at him with bewilderment. Nick was staring at me with a raised eyebrow. I took a moment to recover from my shock and leaned back in my chair. I guess that will be fine, so long as your parents approve. Yulk, we're only a couple of months younger than you are, Yini sighed. Even if our parents aren't fine with it, they can't stop us. I know, but I'd rather not get angry mail from them. Your mother has a penchant for targeting insecurities and quite the way with words. It'll be fine. What about you, Catalina? Oh, I'm fine staying here, Catalina laughed. Magic is confusing, and I don't want to leave the village. I'll miss you two, though. The girls began cooing over each other, while the rest of us watched awkwardly. I noticed that Nick and Nash had finished their food and began to eat mine a bit faster. Once I was done and things had settled down with my students, Nash let out a contented sigh. Well, we should head home, he said. It's getting pretty late. Oh, I don't know. Nima smiled slyly. I think there's one more thing to do before you leave. Nash went stiff. What would that be? I asked. Well, shouldn't we check your levels? You just had a big adventure. Can't we do it tomorrow? I asked with an evil grin. I think we should do it right now, sweetie. Nima's smile turned cold and she stood. Come on, let's go. Nick, Nash, and I stood and followed her. The girls remained at the table, whispering to each other. We approached the counter as Nima retrieved the thingamajig that connects to the Kuraguard. The rectangular box with 6 stubby legs made a soft thud as she set it on the counter. I'll go first, I said, pulling out my guild card and grinning. Nick will go next. Save the best for last, right? Nima laughed a little as she took the metallic card from me and inserted it into the box. Blue and green lights swirled until they formed patterns and a handprint. I placed my hand on the symbol and felt a slight static discharge. Looks like no change for me, I said. Same level and everything. That sucks, I'm sorry, Nick replied. Oh no, it's fine. I haven't exactly been trying to improve my level. Hardly any point for a magic user, you see. Your turn. Nima gave me back my card and took Nick's. Once the lights were done shifting, Nick placed his hand on the palm print. I suddenly remembered what happened the last time we did this. But before I could say anything, Nick took his hand off the light and the symbols began to shift. The human didn't look injured, so I turned my attention to what the box said. Oh, you're level 9 now, I said, suddenly worried about Nash's response. Congratulations. Thanks, he replied nervously, likely for the same reason. Nash, however, seemed to be 1,000 miles away. I kind of felt the same way, actually. Nash had agreed to court Nima once he was level 10. It would result in a change in lifestyle, and I would get far less time with my brother. My role as a teacher in Kirkina would exacerbate that. I always knew this day would come, of course. He or I would get married and have children, or we would take a different path in our careers. Then we would be limited to seeing each other whenever we got the chance. Part of me hoped that he was still only level 9. I'd rather have him grumble about Nick being an upstart than face the cold reality that awaits. He gave Nima his guild card and swallowed heavily. Nima gave Nick back his card and put Nash's into the box. We all held our breath as Nash reached out and placed his hand on the hardened light. Once he took his hand away, Nima and I gasped as the symbols shifted. Nash looked back and forth between us. You're level 11, I managed to say. Nash and I shared a look, knowing exactly what this meant. His courtship with Nima would cause us to drift apart for the first time in over a decade. We gave each other a solemn nod, then Nash turned to Nima with a smile. Marry me, he said. Nima Maxim. Yulk, trying to keep the bittersweet pain out of his voice, read out Nash's new level. 11. A bystander might have mistaken the tone of his voice to be one of shock. Nash had jumped 2 entire levels during their adventure, which is an impressive accomplishment. But I knew the true cause of his hesitancy. Yulk has never been good at maintaining relationships, especially long-distance ones. Nash and I, beginning our courtship, will split the brothers up, and they wouldn't be as close as they have been. In spite of Yulk's feelings, my heart fluttered with excitement. Nash had promised me that we would begin our courtship once he hit level 10, and he'd finally done so. He had stayed true to his word, despite my advancement in the Adventurers Guild providing me enough pay that I could be our meal ticket. I had thought about pointing this out to him, but it probably wouldn't have hastened things. He had made a promise, and he's nothing if not stubborn. But now, his promise is fulfilled and we can Marry me, Nash said. Yulk, Nick, and I stared at him completely dumbfounded. If it weren't for Nick and Yulk mimicking my own reaction, I would have wondered if I'd misheard him. The determination in Nash's emerald green eyes faltered for a moment at our reactions, but they remained locked on my own. Fucking what? Yulk demanded. Yulk's reaction very nearly mimicked my own internal monologue, though for different reasons. He had been expecting a bittersweet parting that lasted the course of a year or more. I had been expecting Nash to ask me on a date to begin our courtship. Instead, Nash had assumed that I'm head over heels for him and skipped straight to demanding my hand in marriage. The frustrating thing is that he's right about how I feel about him. However correct he is, though, it doesn't change the fact that it's insulting that he doesn't think he has to try to win me over. I'm a catch! He should feel like he has to move mountains to win my affection, damn it. On top of it all, he proposed in public. I glanced around the room and noted several widened eyes staring at us. Which of the brothers did they hear? Does it matter? My heart drummed a rapid beat, but it seemed confused as to whether it was because of my anger, embarrassment, or if it was because I dreamt about this exact moment. I want to be your husband. Nash ignored his younger brother. I get that it's sudden, and I understand if you say no, but you're all I've thought about since I made you that promise. We had a couple of close calls on this last adventure, and during our darkest moments, you were my light. I didn't care about coming home, I just wanted to come back to you. Those damn glimmering green eyes, the very same ones that had taken my breath away when I first saw them as a child, bore straight into me. The sheer volume of my feelings threatened to overwhelm me, and for a moment I considered running away to get some time to think. But no, I'm not a little girl anymore. I know how to handle myself. I won't let a proposal from some two-copper adventurer rattle me, even if that adventurer is the love of my life. Nash, I said with a forced smile. You promised me a courtship. The determination in his eyes melted away and was replaced with fear. His well-toned and very shirtless body slightly shifted into a defensive posture, as if expecting to be struck. Thank the gods, a sign of cognizance. He stammered. Marriage is all well and good, and I definitely wouldn't mind having you as a husband. However, I haven't had the chance to go courting because I've been waiting on you to live up to your promise this entire time, I said, letting a little more venom spill into my tone. I will be damned before I miss out on all the cute moments that come with a courtship. You will forget this foolish notion of elopement and take me on dates, I said, reaching over the counter and poking his sturdy chest. You will buy me wonderful gifts, get me the prettiest of flowers, write clever poetry for me, and tell me that I'm the most beautiful mare you've ever seen. Once I've had my fill of all that, you will perform the proper negotiations with my mother. Then and only then may you ask for my hand in marriage. Do you understand me, Nash? Yes, ma'am. And you'd better come up with a better proposal than marry me. That's not even a proposal! It's a demand. Who the hells do you think you are making demands of me? I have royal blood in my veins. I'll not be commanded into marriage. If anyone in this village knew about the royal orc blood in my veins, it should be Nash. When I was a child, my size made other children nervous. Most of the boys tried to be friends with me, but mostly because of how athletic I was. They all wanted me to be on their team in sports. It took until my breasts began to grow in for anyone other than Nash and my mother to realize I was a girl. Even my half-brother treated me like one of the boys. The girls treated me with disdain and jealousy because of how close I was to the boys that they liked. Nash, however, treated me like the little girl I was. He would stand up for me even though I was a head taller than him. He would shout for me and fight for me and protect me from the things that would have tried to hurt me. The other boys would make fun of me when I wore girly clothes, but Nash would tell them to shut up and tell me I was beautiful. Whenever he got an allowance from his mother, he would buy me something girly because he knew how much it meant to me. One of the more beautiful hair clips he got me was currently holding my hair out of my angry face. How could a boy that sensitive bungle such an important moment this badly? I'm sorry, Nima. I didn't mean— Oh, you didn't mean it like that. I shouted. Have some care with your actions and how they're interpreted. You're damn lucky I know you're a blockhead, or I would be under the impression that you think so little of me that you believe that I would absolutely swoon at just the offer of your hand in marriage. I would believe that you're so damned egotistical that you can't even humble yourself to show your affection to me. And now he was trying to argue with me, as if I'm somehow the one misinterpreting the situation. No, I understand perfectly, and that's the only reason I haven't knocked the sense back into his damn skull. Stop trying to talk, damn it! I growled, fighting tears of frustration. Gods, you had such a head start too, with your damned promises and flirtations. You had me believing you were a clever romantic, but you're just a dumbass. The small crowd within the guild hall was now carefully minding their own business, even though it was obvious they were still listening. Yini, Nemora, and Catalina were staring firmly at their table. Even Yulk and Nick were trying to pretend they didn't exist. Had? Nash asked with the voice of a wounded pupper. I did say that, didn't I? I meant it, but didn't mean it like he took it. Gods, what a poor dumb boy. I took a deep breath and released it with a sigh. It's obvious that he considered our childhood to be a part of our courtship. Hells, most people who knew us wouldn't even bat an eye if we eloped. But that was friendship, not romance. I deserve romance, goddamn. You're damn right, Had, I said, crossing my arms. Now you're on the same playing field as all the other boys who fancy my attentions. You'd better work really hard to shine above them. Determination returned to his face and he nodded, finally understanding what he'd done. But I didn't want to let him off just yet. And if you pull something like this again, I'm going to tell your mother, I said sternly. The eavesdropping crowd winced, and the Alta boys both went pale. Yilda isn't known to beat her boys, but even so, it's easy to imagine the former legend beating Nash within an inch of his life without even using a weapon. And God's help him if he tried to fight back. I won't, I'm sorry, Nash replied, then bowed. Miss Maxim, please forgive my transgression and— I'll forgive your transgression, but so help me gods, if you don't give it a little time before asking to court me, I'm going to get violent. I interrupted with a very unladylike growl. Ah, okay. He straightened and grabbed the back of his neck nervously. So, tomorrow then? I sighed again, releasing all the pent-up frustrations that had been bubbling within me. All the other women say that dumb men are the best men, but they conveniently leave out how frustrating they can be. After a moment of regaining my composure, I met his gaze. Yes, tomorrow. Since you obviously require a bit of hand-holding, I should also tell you that you need to make it up to me. You're smart enough to figure out how, right? Yes, ma'am. Good, I replied, a cold smile forming on my features. Will there be anything else? No, ma'am, the three boys answered in unison. Have a good night, I said with mock sweetness. You too, Yulk said. The three boys rushed out into the night without another word, and before I could leave the counter, they were replaced with Yini, Nimora, and Catalina. I could do without their sympathies, but didn't have the energy to turn them away. They convinced me to sit with them, and Yini ran to get us some drinks. Did he really just propose? She asked once she returned, handing me a beer. Yeah, he sure did, I said, the exhaustion infiltrating my voice. Just like that? Catalina asked. What the hell's? Yeah. Damn, I knew Nash was bold, but I didn't think he was that much of an asshole. You poor thing. How dare he? Well, I guess that settles the debate over which is the superior brother, Yini grinned. Did you hear how loud Yulk shouted? Despite myself, I laughed along with them. Yini's crush on Yulk was so obvious that she wouldn't even deny it when asked. Unfortunately, she wants him to act more like Nash, with the exception of today's incident. That's just not going to happen, though. You know, if you want Yulk, you're going to have to snatch the reins, I said, taking a deep drink of my beer. When it comes to love, he's dumber than his brother. And you just saw how dumb his brother can be. All men are kind of dumb when it comes to romance, Catalina said, taking a sip of her beer. That's why I prefer women. We all chuckled. Even though she's open about her sexuality, Catalina has always been incredibly shy when it comes to actual romance. Which is ironic, considering that she can pair with other species, and as such has a much larger dating pool than we do. Yeah, Yini sighed. Oh well, I'll look at the bright side. I'm better off with my crush than Nimora is with hers. What? What crush? Nimora demanded. Oh, sweetie, I said sadly, putting a hand on her shoulder. Come on, you're almost as obvious as Yini is. No, I don't know what you mean. I don't have a crush on anyone. Nick! Catalina grinned. The, human, right? Human, Yini corrected, also grinning. I can't blame you, Nimora. He looks a bit like an orc, and he's probably pretty handsome for a human. Oh, fine, Nimora crossed her arms sternly. I like the way he looks, okay? And those eyes. They're really blue, Catalina agreed. This was the first time I saw them up close. Very pretty. It's probably not something you should pursue, though, I interjected, suddenly feeling a lot older. First of all, there's the We don't know that, though, Nimora interrupted, biting her lip a little. He looks kinda orcish. He might be kinda orcish, you know, down there. That's true, Yini chuckled. None of us dared to take a peek. Oh, come on, I laughed. Well, I guess you could be right. But even so, he's from another world, right? That has to come with a whole cart full of baggage. I could be his narce, though, Nimora winked. The rest of us expressed disgust and laughed. We joked around a bit more and finished our beers. Then the girls went home. I ushered the rest of our patrons out the door and tidied things up a bit before closing the hall and heading home myself. Tomorrow had better be a big day.